Hello, how are you? Before we start tonight's program, this is a reminder that this episode will address the continuous events of my journey with multiple sclerosis and demyelination. This topic may be sensitive to some of our viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The Virtual Walk MS 2021 is this Saturday, and it's not too late to help raise money for an incredible organization in that of the National MS Society. The National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is comprised of unpredictable and often disabling flare-ups of the central nervous system. Such flare-ups disrupt the flow of information between the brain and the body. The National MS Society is the largest private funder of MS researchers in the world, investing more than $1 billion to date. MS stops people from moving, but the National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867, again 1-800-344-4867, or go to our website at nationalmssociety.org. To donate to either Susan Williams' Virtual Walk MS team or mine, consult the two websites below me and at bndfr.com/dn5r9. That would be the fundraising page for Susan Williams. She did the show about 3 weeks ago. And then also rebrand.ly/adventure to a cure is for my fundraising team, the fundraising team that will be walking on Saturday for the Virtual Walk MS 2021. And on that, let's begin. Today, I took a second MRI in the 7T MRI machine over at Penn Medicine. And what I found was very interesting. Normally, I wouldn't go over MRI imagery on the Venture Forward, but today we'll discuss it because this is the Venture Forward. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to the Venture Forward. I am John Venturini, a recovering addict of alcoholism, overeating, obesity, and compulsive gambling. And it's an honor to see all of you tonight on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. It's been a long day today. It started really early today in getting over to Penn Medicine over at the Perelman Center and getting ready for an MRI. Not just any MRI. We discussed what the 7T MRI machine is previously. It is a high-powered magnetic resonance image that doesn't require any contrast. Such a very powerful image that basically, as I mentioned the last time, you feel this sort of great level of disorientation on the way into the machine and on the way out of the machine because of the heavy things that are going on in it. I was in the machine for about an hour and 10 minutes today. And afterwards, Basically I got a disc. And some of that imagery I will share with you momentarily to, basically to show the contrast between what happened in the January MRI, but then the MRI from this morning. I am a bit surprised, actually pleasantly surprised, and we'll get to that imagery in a second. But first of all, I want to say hi to all of you on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And it looks like I have family on Facebook, and that of my mom. Hello, and why is the graphic up there? Wow, the graphic's all the way. Oh, that's from Friday. Hi, Mom. How are you? Hope you're well. And my aunt. Hope you're doing well as well. Love you both. Yeah. So it's an interesting journey. It has been thus far. One realizing that this is absolutely multiple sclerosis, as the second demyelination was back over the holidays. But then, moreover, the sort of progression forward, saying, okay, another MRI, moments in Center County Hospital on New Year's Eve, and then also getting MRIs done and working with a neurologist over at Penn Medicine. This is stuff that arguably is saving my life, as you'll see momentarily, in the sense that there hasn't been any new demyelination. There hasn't been any new lesions between January and now. So, Ocrevus already working its magic. Marilyn, good afternoon to you. Doing well, and hope you're doing well over by you. Let's take a look at this, shall we? So they gave me a disc. Let's see if I have the disc. I don't. It's somewhere else. But basically, I asked them to burn me a copy of some of the imagery from the MRI. Now, if they gave me all the imagery, it would well past that of a DVD. But my neurologist obviously has that set of images, and he's looking over that tonight and tomorrow, and will get back to me on his take of this. But when I see this, I see something that looks quite interesting. Always been someone who has been into science, not only that of mathematics and statistics, but also biology and chemistry. So I think going through the thought of, well, if you're going to give me an MRI disc, I want to see this. So let's take a look at it. That is the two images, back to back, side to side. The image on the left was the MRI from January. The image on the right is from today. And what you'll see is that the number of, hey, Paul, how are you? The number of bright white areas, basically the lesions, aren't as bright anymore. They are darker. They are grayed, in the sense that there hasn't been any new activity towards those lesions. Also, I don't see any difference in the number of lesions from the left side to the right side. So if you could see here, there's basically the same number of lesions here. There aren't any new lesions there. Now, granted, given that there is no sort of thing as a remyelinating agent, there is no sort of less number of lesions, but the lesions that are there aren't as bright as they were in January. Couple of things to know. One, Ocrevus, or however you want to pronounce this, is a drug that attacks certain B cells. B cells have been known to be one of the chief drivers in that of demyelination. So this is a targeted sort of drug that goes against the B cells in my brain and my central nervous system. That's one. The second point is that even though there is no such animal as a remyelinating agent these days, at least one that is prescribed, there are plenty of research studies going on right now for remyelinating agents, for remyelinating drugs, for remyelination in that of supplements as well. It goes back to the book and the movie Lorenzo's Oil, which talks about this. We are close from the research that is being done across academia, not only in the United States, but around the world, that we're closer to this. If we turned back the clock 10 years ago, we were talking about blood infusions and that of something called CCVSI, which was very risky, which had not a good amount of efficacy about it, but also had some fatality to it. We're not talking about CCVSI these days. So we're talking about drugs that are actually making a difference. We're talking about drugs that are not only treating those that have remitting relapsing multiple sclerosis, but we're talking about drugs that help those that have primary multiple sclerosis, and that of my multiple sclerosis as well. It's a very exciting time. It's a time within my lifetime I truly think we will have, if not a cure, I think a better step forward. Matt, how are you? Hope you're doing well. I think if we look at what it means to have multiple sclerosis, as we talked about with Tina a couple weeks ago, and what we talked about with Susan, with her daughter a month ago, it is not so much a deadly sort of force right now. There is a way to live a life with multiple sclerosis and live a very productive one, to live a very healthy one if you catch it soon enough. Knock on wood, I think I might have just done that. So this morning, and going over the disc and looking at the left versus the right was a very interesting sort of, not necessarily epiphany, but a realization for sure. Matt says, I'm fabulous, good sir. Hope you're doing well, too. Had some slides. We could talk over that. And trusted on that. I mean, outside of the fact that I've had another MRI this morning and I've been up for a very large, considerable portion of the day, this is the only topic today. So obviously, if you have any questions about MS or my prognosis or all of that, by all means, ask your questions and let me know, because I'm learning more and more as I work with my neurologist and his team, an incredible team over at Penn Medicine. So let me actually go over to a bit of a slide deck that I prepared to talk about this. And the thing is, I'm very thankful for the study. Extremely thankful for the study. The study of me getting these MRIs is something that was basically akin to the fact that, hey, Ocrevus was the right medication for you. Let's track how you're doing over time. So that's what this was. This is the same MRI that I had back in January. So when we take a look at this, let me first talk about this 7T MRI study, and then I'll give another plug for the MS Walk on Saturday. The baseline MRI that I took was on January 26th. Today is the 3-month MRI. So it's the Ocrevus plus 2 weeks. So the last Ocrevus half Ocrevus infusion I took was 2 Wednesdays ago, back on the 14th. It's something where, they're going to continue monitoring me over the next 4.5 years. There's another MRI in July, and then there's another MRI in October, and then going to next year, it's 2 a year. And what they're trying to do is trying to find differences from one MRI to the previous. So basically taking a rolling history of the MRIs over time. And so all of this is being done at the University of Pennsylvania at the Perelman Center. Matt has a question. The question is, what is the best outcome possible for some with MS? Symptomology, basically. Have someone that can be fully functional, walking, talking, being able to think without much of a problem. If you think about the sort of Symptomology we've talked about in the past: optic neuritis or optic freezing. We talk about numbness, desensitization. We talk about drop leg. We talk about things which is not as common, but problems with hearing. We also talk about situations that are a lot more serious in that of problems swallowing, problems with urinary problems, so continence problems. It can go really deep because if you think about what multiple sclerosis is, it is basically a block in the pathway between the brain and other organs within the body, the central nervous system, more or less. So when someone has a very severe situation of multiple sclerosis, it could very well damage a lot of their systems over time. I go back to the thing I said earlier. I am very, very fortunate that that has not happened to me. So, that's not to say that everybody has the same effect with MS. It's a very individualistic disease. I actually have some slides on that, which we've shown before, but we'll talk to that. Let's see. So if we talk about how multiple sclerosis works, basically you have basically a really good diagram of what the central nervous system is. If you look at the upper right hand corner with the axon and the nucleus, that is a healthy sort of sheath covering of the myelin over the nerve. The lower right hand corner is a nerve that has damaged myelin. And what MS is, on the most part, is the damaging of that myelin sheath covering within the brain and the central nervous system. You know, for some people, it's a touch disorder from numbness. For some people, it is a walking and balance problem. I was told the other day that when I went for my first consult with my doctor over at Penn Medicine, I was walking with a bit of a limp. Not necessarily a problem of incomplete gait, but I was having difficulties walking. I was also having problems with, obviously, brain fog and whatnot. For some people, you can have bladder and bowel problems. For some people, it could be cognitive in the sense of brain fog. For some people, it could be depression. And for some people, it could be slurred speech. Now, one of the funny things that were said about multiple sclerosis is sometimes when someone has the problems with speech, it sounds like they're drunk, but they are having problems talking, much as they are having problems speaking or problems walking, etc. Just because they look fine does not necessarily mean that they're doing okay. And, you know, it's funny, I was talking to the doctor this morning, not my primary neuro, but one of his assistants, in the sense that trying to pick off sort of the emotional or psychological or mental sort of fatigue that MS brings is not easy, right? We don't have DSM-5s at the handy to try to figure out how's someone doing from one day to the next day to the next day. We talk about this from the sense of neurology and neuroscience, not necessarily from a sense of, as funny as this sounds, mental therapy or that of psychological therapy. The two do go hand in hand, but when we try to fight the disorder, when we try to fight the demyelination, the primary focus is that of the myelin sheath withering away, or the lesions that you saw on the MRIs just a few minutes ago. This is a schematic of what the brain looks like. There's a skull, there's a dura, there's lobes that are connected. There's also fluid. And one of the major examinations that are done in detecting multiple sclerosis is that of a spinal tap, because they can find out whether or not demyelination can be harvested over time based on what the spinal tap returns. When I had a spinal tap done in 2011, they didn't find any sort of marker for it until the 5th or 6th round out, which made the neurologists think that maybe it was an isolated symptom, isolated incident, or as they call a CIS. As we fast forward to November of this past year, we realized it was a lot more than a CIS. It was another set of demyelinations, another set of lesions that was enough of an alarm, enough of a warning for me to go seek help for this. We talk about optic neuritis. Optic neuritis is a very confused term in the sense that optic neuritis normally talks to the fact that the eyeball is freezing. And yes, the eyeball does freeze. But optic neuritis can also mean pain with the optic nerve. Optic neuritis was something I had back in 2011 when I had that first event. It's something that I didn't have as much with in this round back in November, December. But between that and the desensitization, that was enough for me to say, I have to get something done about this. And moreover, I was having a hard time sleeping. I had a hard time with concentration. So the symptoms were there. The symptoms were there for me to do something about this. There are 150 billion neurons in the CNS. And, the thing is, all of them along the brain and the CNS and down the spinal cord are all at hand for the myelin that's around it. And when the myelin starts withering away, it becomes a problem. It's a dependent on where the lesions actually are that talks to what is the main set of symptomology that's surrounding this. Got a question? Paul says, glad you did get something done and got some help. Did your doc say a lot of people ignore the symptoms and don't get help? Yeah. In fact, that happens a lot because sometimes these sort of symptoms happen as a one-off or a two-off, what they call CISs. When you have all of them stacked together, that brings a heightened sense of concern. Not sure if I ever talked about this. The first set of doctors I saw back in 2011 wasn't that of a neurologist. I saw an ear, nose, and throat doctor. I saw, who else? I saw my PCP, obviously. And I saw a couple other doctors that were not neurologists. Had like 3 or 4 CAT scans of the brain that didn't result in anything. And yet the symptoms got worse and worse and worse. It took a trip to Hartford Hospital and a trip to see a neurologist to say, okay, we're going to get the MRI done. We're going to figure out what's going on. We'll also do a spinal tap, and we're going to see exactly what we can do with this. Out of that, I was diagnosed with a CIS. We called it a demyelinating event because back in 2011, you don't necessarily want to have the marker of multiple sclerosis because of a pre-existing condition, that sort of thing. This day and age in 2021, I'm at peace with this. But also my neurologist said, well, you're definitely getting the diagnosis now. I don't think there's any question about that. It was borderline back 10 years ago. And it was really a decision on whether or not, okay, I'm going to treat this or I'm not. Another moment of realization, another moment of honesty, is that the medication landscape for multiple sclerosis back 10 years ago is not as sophisticated as it is now. We talk about things like crab drugs, Capaxin, Rebif, Avonex, Betasterin. Those are the big 4. Now we talk about other drugs that target B cells or B cells and T cells. As I mentioned before, Ocrevus is one that targets the B cells. It's a semi-annual infusion that targets selected B cells that are tied, the CD20 cells, I don't have a graphic for it, but that tie to the demyelination, that are tied to the central nervous system, tied to the brain. So, yeah, to go back to your question, Paul, that happens a lot. And the other thing is we talk about the difference between active lesions and new lesions and actively enhancing lesions. That's the importance of getting these sort of tests done, these sort of MRIs done on a more sort of scheduled sort of cadence, very fortunate that this first year I'm getting 4 of them. Most neurologists will say every 6 months. But again, if you take one image off of the last image and see that there isn't any sort of white new lesion there, you know that it's not active. I'll go back to the MRIs for a second. If we look at the difference between the left and the right, you notice that the right-hand side doesn't have that sort of sharp, there's not as many white spots on the right-hand side as there are on the left-hand side. Those spots have become gray. They are still there, but they are not as bright and as lucent as they were before. Question from Sue. Has the Oservis option been out for a long time or recently? Oservis has been around for about 4 years. It has started to be basically been started to be given to more people that have MS, outside of primary MS, but relapsing MS as well. What they're finding is that it does such a good job of preventing additional flare-ups that's being prescribed for more people. It's something where it's not a pill that you take, it's not an injection that you give yourself, but it's something that you only have to go back to the doctor every 6 months to see what's going on, to do image over image, animation over animation, and figure out exactly what's going on. Have a comment in here that the sound was lost for certain viewers. If that's the case, please let me know in the comments. So lesions are basically your primary marker. When it comes to multiple sclerosis and demyelination, they are the primary marker. This is another graphic that talks to exactly the difference between what one person with MS has, or one person with MS feels versus another, in the sense that you also have the sense of these sort of feelings, demyelination, pins and needles, etc. And you don't know exactly what it's affecting until you look at something like those MRIs, or you do a spinal tap to figure out exactly what areas of the brain, what areas of the spinal cord, what areas of the spine are being affected by the lesions that are being produced. You talk about the different systems in the body that can be affected by demyelination. You have situations with eyesight and vision, basically. So blurred vision, color distortion, loss of vision in one eye pain. When we talk about optic neuritis, usually it basically insinuates eye pain. I never had the pain necessarily with the optic freezing, but it's definitely part of it. Mental changes in that decreased concentration, attention deficit, memory loss. Yeah, and that's something that fully never went away since 2011. I noticed in this set of flare-ups that it came back. And then also Oservis has basically a side effect of that of slight depression. It's all in the paperwork for Oservis exactly how far it goes. But it could also be confounded by the fact that when you have someone with MS, you already have someone who could be dealing with depression. What's funny is, and I'll go back to this, back in 2011, one of the neurologists I saw thought that what I was dealing with was depression until I went for a couple of MRIs at his office in southeastern Connecticut. Loss of sensation, muscle spasms, limb weakness, bladder and bowel dysfunction. Also, depression, paranoia, weeping, crying. Within this last set of last 6 months in this set of flare-ups, definitely a lot more crying. Now, one could also make the argument that there's been a lot of stuff going on over the last 2+ years that could have exacerbated that all its own. And yeah, that's why it's very hard to say, you know what, MS was the cause of that, when already you have some events that are going on that cause depression, that cause that sense of paranoia, that cause that sense of crying. The random crying is one of the things that, even in the last 2 months has been something that it's been very hard for me to deal with. But it happens. It can happen on the most nicest of days. It could happen where a day where everything goes right, and for some weird reason I'm crying. And I'll say that within the last month with the Ostervis, I haven't experienced that outside of the fact that I was really tired, really exhausted, and dealing with the sort of downtime off of an infusion, or a set of 2 infusions, actually. This is another reminder about the fact that a lot of the symptoms that many deal with multiple sclerosis are not necessarily visible. They're hidden. If I told you I was crying every day for the last few months, you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know that unless I was fresh from crying and you were talking to me, and it sounded like there was something wrong. And there's sometimes I was crying for reasons that are not obvious. They're like, I don't know where this came on from. Outside of the things that are going on, outside of the battles I've been fighting, these sort of situations has arisen as well, where I'm dealing with that, but also dealing with the past, dealing with a lot of things that I've been dealing with. So here's a picture of what a healthy brain looks like. Healthy brain's on the left-hand side. A brain with the plaques or the lesions are on the right-hand side. So what you'll see, and I'll go back to the 2 MRIs, is that my brain has a lot of those. There's a lot of those sort of spots that shouldn't be there, but yet is blocking that sort of communication between the brain and other parts of the body. And it's just a reminder of what some of the optic neuritis symptoms are, the eye movements, optic freezing, which is very scary when you go through that when you're driving. The fact is, back 10 years ago, when I was dealing with this CIS, I didn't drive for most of that. And it was through taking Solu-Medrol and resting and really getting back to normal that I got that ability back. But sometimes it is very hard to see. Sometimes you get that sense where you do that whole eyeball test and you'll notice that the eyeball will freeze. And it's not necessarily one that comes with pain. It's, we talk about neuritis, but neuritis insinuates the pain that goes with that. I like to call it optic freezing. And then here's just another graphic about demyelination and what that looks like. Let's talk about Saturday. And I don't have a time yet about when I'm doing this on Saturday, but I'm going to go back to here we go. So Saturday. So as with a lot of things in a post-2020 world, things are virtual in the sense that there isn't a course or a gathering together to do the MS Walk. It is virtual. That said, the National MS Society has done a lot to make it as an interactive experience. They've updated their app to basically make it as much as a charity walk as it is. Muchly amazed by the National MS Society and this whole walk. What you see on the screen right now are 2 sites that are tied to fundraising for the MS Walk, the virtual MS Walk 2021. In the upper left-hand corner is the page for Susan Williams. That'd be the bndfr.com/dn5r9. And the lower right-hand corner is my site, which is rebrand.ly/a venture to a cure. We're trying to raise as much money as we can for the National MS Society. It's one of the largest charitable organizations there is for disease out there, raising more than $1 billion to date. And actually, I'm going to go back to Maine here and bring up the phone number once again. So their phone number, again, 1-800-344-4867. Again, 1-800-344-4867. Or you can go to their site at nationalmssociety.org. A lot of great information about what they're doing for MS and helping lead the way as far as treatment, leading the way as far as medical science and really trying to blaze ways forward to help this for sure. Have a comment from Sue. I tried to donate, but it thinks I'm a robot. I'll try again. So if give it another shot if you get a chance, and if you still have an issue with donating, let me know. We can find a way to get you to help out the National MS Society. And again, muchly appreciated in advance. As for all of you who have donated to the National MS Society for either my team or for Susan's team, muchly appreciated. It's an incredible organization, and it's, for those of us that have MS, but also our families, or for families of those that have MS, or families of those that have someone who has MS in their family, it is a very important organization. They do a lot for not only these people that have MS or these families, but also trying to find a cure, trying to find new treatments, and trying to beat this thing once and for all. I don't have a set time on when I'll be doing the walk on Saturday, but I will be live streaming it. And as soon as I have a time set, I will put that announcement on a channel and set that up. It'll be on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And I will walk, and I will basically stream while I walk, because I've shared enough. I shared a lot of this story up to now. Why not do that? Why not show you exactly what I'm doing to try to beat this? What I'm doing to try to raise awareness of multiple sclerosis. Going to cut ahead for Thursday. Thursday, we're going to talk about something that doesn't get talked about much, in a sense that we know about autism, but we don't know necessarily what the effects of autism is with adults. And when the number of autistic adults are in this country is at 2.5%, based on a CDC study this past year, it is time to take a look at what that looks like. So we're going to have a conversation about that. We'll have a guest in that of Ashley Blake. We'll talk about some of the things that you can look for, but also how prevalent this actually is, because we need to start talking about that too. So that's the Thursday episode. Friday, we'll do VF Talks at 5:15 Eastern, 2:15 Pacific. On Friday, it's our conversation about anything and everything with Ashley, Matt, and Paul, and myself. And then Saturday, I will be live streaming for the MS Walk. But on that, I will say the same thing I say at the end of every single Venture Forward or VF Talks. Stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You're worth it. I'll see you Thursday night at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. Have a great night.